Good evening, friends. So, what happened on the fronts for today's most significant day? Firstly, it became known from various sources how the attack on the airfield in Kherson took place. Firstly, it was not just a multiple rocket launcher attack, it was an advance, including on foot, with an attempt to capture the airport. As a result, the attack was repulsed. There were losses among the personnel defending the airfield, and at the airfield itself, after being hit by a multiple launch rocket system, not only 3 helicopters and 2 fuel trucks were destroyed, but another 11 vehicles were damaged. At the same time, none of the pilots of the flight crew was injured. That is, as a counterattack, this is a completely worthy success of the Nikolaev grouping, but as a counteroffensive or an attempt to release it in the eastern direction, this is a complete failure. Further, if we pay attention to what is happening in Mariupol. Here, from unverified information, there is only one thing: that if hostilities continue at night, then by morning the Nazi grouping located in the central area of the city will be cut off. Further, if we turn our attention to the Donetsk-Gorlovka agglomeration, we will see that the offensive here is developing much more slowly than we would like, but again, 2 kilometers passed in the direction of Marinka. That is, half of Marinka was passed and the nearest villages too. That is, there is progress, but it comes literally with the destruction of almost all the forces located there. A similar situation is in the Luhansk direction. A cauldron is also being formed there, that is, this small southern cauldron slams shut between Mariupol and Donetsk. This is a small cauldron. The second one in the north is small, it is located northeast of Lugansk, it also closes. And, in fact, the main forces remain just to the west of Luhansk and Donetsk, which constitute the main operations of the combined forces of Ukraine. At the same time, they cannot go anywhere, except perhaps in small groups on private transport of 3-5 people, trying to hide under the guise of local residents, to get to Dnipro or Zaporizhzhia. Well, as I understand it, these are not combat-ready units, which, with guns and armored vehicles, could go on the run. That is, they are doomed to sit in their fortified areas and actually die slowly, long and painfully. Unfortunately, this is precisely what the Kiev leadership dooms them to. It cannot inflict any blocking blows. The fighting in Nikolaev showed this. Yes, there was a group that tried to get out of Zaporizhzhia. A blow was struck at the Zaporizhzhia 2 station on Baburka. The station was destroyed, the tracks were disabled. Nothing is known about the losses. But, I think that an attempt will be continued to build up our forces somewhere in the Pavlodar region in order to inflict at least some kind of strike on the flank of the advancing Russian troops from the north. How successful the attempt will be, I think that as previous practice shows, which was unsuccessful. Moreover, Ukrainian aviation does not appear at all in this region on the left bank. There are few planes and helicopters left. They are still trying to do something in the Kiev region. But they are regularly shot down, and single sorties, again, do not solve the main task. Further, raisins are already clearly taken. The photo shows the Nazi symbols of the headquarters of the 81st Brigade. Fighting is also taking place much further south, in the area of Svyatogorsk. Here all the bridges have been blown up, that is, progress is slower than we would like, but it is going on. That is, the plan that Kyiv has is practically being implemented, that is, all kinds of prolongation of hostilities, maximizing casualties, waiting for a miracle that Russia will suddenly surrender under the incredible weight of Western sanctions. This is an erroneous point of view, because Russia just cannot give up. The top leadership of the country speaks about this. It explains that there is a redistribution of the world, a redistribution of spheres of influence. The Western monopoly on power is ending, therefore Russia cannot retreat, because it will have to retreat very far, and the situation will be much worse. That is, the question there is not even in the reparations and restoration of Ukraine, as they expect in Kiev. The question is that now Russia is fighting for its land. This is a policy of the country, it is not an ideology, not a statement of propaganda. Russia is restoring the Russian world, such is the policy of Moscow, which, I note, does not have a state ideology, but there is a policy. At the same time, it is becoming more and more obvious in Ukraine that Ukraine also has an ideology. This is an ideology based on Russophobia and Nazism, because, unfortunately, there are groups banned, including those banned by the U.S. Congress, that fight as part of the armed forces of Ukraine. Parts of the Azov Regiment and Kharkov have already become part of the armed forces of Ukraine, that is, in fact, neo-Nazi organizations have become part of the armed forces of Ukraine. Neo-Nazi symbols on the walls of the headquarters of the 81st Brigade are also evidence of Nazism. I'm not talking about Mr. Onufrienko from the Tornado Detachment, who was released from prison. This is also a convinced Nazi, who is now also fighting with his people under the leadership of Supreme Commander Zelensky. I have given only a few examples, there are many more. Nobody hides this anymore. Ukrainian television on the air of the Ukraine 24 channel reports that they will kill Russians and be famous for Adolf Eichmann, who also killed children, and we say that we will do the same. This is an objective reality, and in order to fight his reality, it is obvious that Russia needs to start introducing the very ideology in Ukraine that does not exist in Russia itself. And you need to convince the people who are most afraid that the Russians will come and then leave again, that the Russians will not go anywhere. Again, this is not propaganda. This is a policy that will inevitably be pursued by Moscow on the territory of the now former Ukraine. The Russians, indeed, will not retreat anywhere, no matter what the diplomats say and no matter what negotiations they conduct. Russia is already from the occupied territories, or captured, call it what you want, will not go anywhere. Denationalization and all other methods of denazification that were applied to Nazi Germany will be applied here as well. The fact is that this is an objective reality, and not agitation and propaganda. In this case, I absolutely calmly evaluate the policy of Moscow, the policy of Putin, the policy of the entire Russian leadership and the majority of the Russian people, who perceive this war as a domestic one. Yes, a lot has changed over the past years, but the liberal intelligentsia naturally objects. But we are all used to this. This is what people who live in the West need to understand in order to negotiate something with Russia, but they will have to negotiate, because no one starts a nuclear war, so you will negotiate, and in order to negotiate, you need to understand your opponent and enemy. Begin to understand, because otherwise you will suffer defeat after defeat. You will be surprised at those secrets of the Russian soul that you have not revealed, and as a result you will once again lose some circle of struggle with this Russian world. This is not the first time I ask everyone to treat this not as agitation and propaganda. I just want to convey to the understanding of all politicians in different countries and those people who live in the territories both controlled by the Kiev regime and already uncontrolled, friends and acquaintances, that Russia is going nowhere, won't leave. Now Russia has nowhere to retreat at all, because neither Moscow is behind these heavy sanctions and Russophobia. Those countries that support it, including China, will turn away from Russia, so Russia will not retreat. And I also forgot some other news. BMW and Volkswagen are suspending factories across Europe due to a shortage of parts imported from Ukraine. I think they are also engaged not in propaganda, but in stating facts. In the UK, fishermen, construction workers and truckers united and blocked oil depots in the cities of Brest and Lorient. Quote, "For every litre of diesel or gasoline, the French government pockets €1 in taxes. The law forbids us to work at a loss. We cannot work, we need a price, as it was before the crisis." The Croatian edition writes that in the port of Rijeka, the Croatian police arrested a yacht that belongs to the billionaire Medvedchuk. For your information, in 2004, Putin became the godfather of Medvedchuk's youngest daughter, Daria. Russia has not yet imposed any sanctions, including on the supply of gas to Ukraine. That's all the best, goodbye.